All right, so I'm going to share some stuff, some ideas with you guys. Hopefully you find it of value. It's a little bit of a story, a little bit of a journey, and some insights and takeaways that we've had across LinkedIn and other industries. So what I want to frame the conversation around is the employee value proposition. It doesn't matter how large or small an organization is. If you're employing any talent, you have intentionally or unintentionally employee value proposition. You are creating a culture, you're creating an environment, you're giving them tools, you're giving them decision frameworks, benefits, comp, that give them a promise on how you're going to treat them. That's an employee value proposition. But why does it matter? Because when you talk to an employee, it tells your story. How often you repeat it, how often you follow up on those words, the promise that you keep and don't keep is your brand. And that will impact your ability to hire and retain talent that you've spent so much time and effort to hire. Now, here's the challenge. In my space at LinkedIn, I get to talk to about, hundreds of companies throughout the year. We talk a lot about talent challenges, how to recruit great talent. We talk about diversity and inclusion and now belonging. We talk about processes and systems, et cetera. But one of the most critical, magical things we talk about is this employee value proposition. What does that brand look like, and where are the mistakes? The biggest mistake that is seen and really measurable is when you're not in alignment with what you promise externally for your service and or product and what you promise internally to your employees. You have to thread that needle. And what I mean by that, let's give you a real example. I was talking to a really high-end retail organization, great fashion design organization. They're based in Europe. They were having an attraction issue, a turnover issue. They weren't sure what it was causing, what caused it, et cetera, et cetera. So I happened to go to Europe. I said, let me sit down and talk to you about what is it that you're doing, how you're paying, your benefits, your value prop. Let's have a conversation. And what we discovered in that one day of conversation, they took me into their design center, and it was amazing. It was amazing handbags and shoes and great designs and fashion, and just I felt like loved when I walked in the room. It had great color. They offered me a cappuccino. It was a great experience. And they said, okay, now the meeting begins. Let's take you across the street. We're going to talk about the problems that we have. And we literally walked across the street to a different building, and it was gray, no windows, no color, no accoutrement, if you will, no coffee, not even like a water bottle at the table. We kind of hunkered down. And I felt like I was in a basement. And I said, who works here? Everyone else but the designers. I go, where's your turnover problem? Everywhere else but the designers. And it was obvious to me what happened. I'm like, so how do you recruit people? Let's look at your recruiting story. And they talked about setting the tone for fashion and being creative and, being surrounded by people like you and innovation and joy and color. And then you go into this room that manifested something completely different. And then I said, that's fascinating. Do you not see the dichotomy in what you just said? So 80% of your workforce lives in this domain, and 10, 20% are on this other domain. There is complete difference. Now, it's okay to have different value propositions. In some larger companies, they build a moat around technologists, and they pay higher in the market for engineers than they do for the rest of the company. That's okay if you're competing for talent. But the experience in how you treat them, their benefits, how you welcome them, how you respect them should be universal. Another thing on this balance, if you promise the world integrity and quality of service, that we're always listening, we always care, and then you go inside your organization and the employee experience is poor quality, we're pulling things together with a Band-Aid, we don't really care how you're experiencing your work experience, just get the work done, that's incongruent as well. And so if they're the employee base that is selling your goods and services, how honest and authentic can they be when they don't experience that for themselves? So that's your conundrum, that's your opportunity. So if you look and thread it through, you will have a better outcome both for you, the company, and the employees. So let me just use LinkedIn as an example. So LinkedIn's vision is to create economic opportunity for every member of the workforce. Very purpose-driven. It aligns with all of our employees. We want to change the world, make sure people are not underemployed, but they have great opportunities, they can find their dream job. Then we have a mission statement, like many companies do. We want to connect the world's professionals and make them more productive and successful. That also feels good. And this is a little bit about LinkedIn. We're about almost 10,000 employees today. When I started 4 years ago, we're at 3,000 employees, a lot of growth, a lot of change. We are in many countries, speaking many languages, and this value proposition, how we show up, has to be reinforced. Else you will lose your culture. These are our value props from a product standpoint, what's outward facing, stay connected, advance my career, work smarter, etc. And then I asked Jeff and my peers, I said, what about us? And he goes, well, Pat, we have these culture and our values. I go, do we have an EVP? And he goes, I don't like title inflation. I go, I meant a value prop, Jeff. Do we have a value prop that translate what we do for the world inside for our employees? And he goes, well, we have our culture and values. And I said, all right, let's talk about them and see how they manifest themselves inside the company. And so I took, as an example on values, open, honest, and constructive for the company. And this is where leadership shows up, by the way. How do you manifest these words in decisions and actions? And so I had 10 peers at the time, and I said, okay, let's take a softball. How many of you have a performance management process? How many of you evaluate your employees' performance? All 10 hands were raised. I said, awesome. How many of you have a rating scale of some sort that you evaluate and triangulate your employees? All 10 hands stayed up. How many of you communicate that rating that I assume impacts their career and their compensation to those employees? Only one hand stayed raised. And I said, awesome. I didn't act disappointed. I went up and crossed out open, honest, and constructive. And Jeff goes, whoa, what are you doing, Pat? That's our culture and our values. And I said, well, then add sometimes, when it's convenient, when we want to be, when it's not so hard. Like we can add qualifiers if you want, but that's how we make decisions, right? It's situational. And he goes, no, we stand for this. And I said, if you stand for this, then make it real. If we have a process, don't hide it. If we're going to do something, provide context and be transparent. Employees, in absence of context and information, have a black box. In that black box, psychologically, we as humans will fill it with negative connotation. About 80% of us will assume negative. That's our human nature. So the more you shine light on this box and give them clarity, the more able they are to engage, understand, and stay motivated and do what you ask them to do. And that's what we want to be, right? Great leaders, great managers. So an exercise was, if you have these values and cultures in your business, test yourselves as leaders. How does this show up? Am I consistent with my customers as I am inside? And if there's not a consistency, why not? And you don't have to be perfect today. Like, that's where I freaked out my peers. Like, whoa, Pat, what do you mean by this? And I said, look, we can build a roadmap that gets you to where we want to be with intentionality. We can become more transparent when we have the right process, the right context, the right training. We can get to this better clarity, but let's commit to it. That's the value proposition. That's our promise. And so from several weeks of conversation, these conversations were snippets, right? They're about 2 hours at a pop. We broke it down. It says, what does this mean for our customers? What does it mean for us? And from that, we create a value prop, and this is a condensed version. We talked about talent's our number one operating priority. That made sense for LinkedIn because we sell a talent product. We're out in the market. I'm promising companies we're going to help you hire and retain great talent. We should be able to do the same inside. That seems simple. Culture sets us apart. We compete with the Googles and Facebooks and every startup imaginable. You for talent. And we believe culture sets us apart. I believe that culture eats strategy every day of the week. If you have a strong, healthy culture and people are aligned with your purpose and your vision, you will crush it. You will overcome obstacles faster and you'll be more creative because of it. And we believe in transformation of self, company, and the world. Because we're growing rapidly, we're experimenting, people will learn new skills, they'll become agile, they'll have a growth mindset. So these are value props, and we put programs behind these words. And these programs don't happen overnight. Large-scale change for larger companies takes about 2 to 3 years to get into your DNA, into your language. 3 years. Here's what I mean by that. Year 1, you find an opportunity. You find a gap in what you want to promise and what you do. There's a gap. There's an opportunity. You design a program, you experiment with something to close that gap and achieve your opportunity. You roll that bad boy out in 1 year. You get input on what your design is and all that, but you roll it out, and then you sit back and see how effective it is. And that program will have bumps and bruises and have some great wins. And then you pull in that feedback from your internal customers and say, how'd that work for you? What could I have changed? What could we have done better? You take that feedback, you modify it, and then you roll it out again at the end of year 2. By year 3, you're more than 90% there. The language is part of the management team. The employees understand the context. They feel heard, and their input is part of the DNA of the outcome. So if you want something part of who you are, it takes time and iteration and feedback to get it right. You just don't throw something out there and you're one and done. Employees will tell you if you hit the mark or not. Just always be listening. So then we talk about the journey. And so this was really fun for me. So when I joined LinkedIn, we were fractured. We had recruiting underneath business partners supporting our teams around the world. We had different comp structures, different systems, different approach, different value props. We were selling the opportunity of working at LinkedIn differently depending on what function you sat in. If I'm Eng, I got this promise. If I'm sales, I got that promise. If I'm in India versus Germany, it was different. They were not touching the elephant in a holistic way. So if I were to ask a candidate what it feel like to work for LinkedIn, they would describe a tail in Germany, a trunk in India, a leg in Singapore, an ear in New York, right? It was different. It was all part of the elephant, but they didn't understand how to link it all together. And so what you want if you're operating globally and in a complex organization, you want to make sure there's a thread, a story that overarches, and then you localize it. Be very clear about what you're localizing so you don't have redundancy. For me, to realize the value prop, we created a 3-year journey map. We did an audit of the HR function. I audited us against IT, finance, call centers, anything that was service related, customer service even, and like support, sales, engineering, sales, support, to understand how you measured success, how you listened to the customer, how do you close problems, what does efficiency and effectiveness look like, and then I brought that best practice into HR, and I said, what does HR need to look like, and then I put out a big audacious goal for us. And I said, we were at $700 million at the time. What if we were a $10 billion company? We were at 3,000 employees. What if we were at 20,000, 40,000 employee base? What if we're global? What if we're doing M&A successfully? What if we were leveraging multiple languages, compliant in every country, and a destination for employees? Meaning we had high engagement employer of choice in every country. What would that look like? How would we do that? What does that mean to us? And we took that big goal, we reversed engineered and created this map. And this is an abbreviated version of it. But it is this format that I use to communicate to my leaders, to the board, to the employees. The vision was inspiring you, the vision for HR, inspiring you to transform the world of talent, meaning everyone we talk to, every customer, every leader, is to up the game of talent. How do you motivate, attract, retain, and treat your employees? That's our goals, very simple. My mission for LinkedIn as a function was to enable a high-performing, healthy company that scales. We were scaling rapidly. I wanted to hire great talent. I wanted to retain that talent. I wanted to have a great, healthy organization that's respectful, it's inclusive. Like, what does that mean? And so the first 18 months were what we called platform plays. You'll see it at the top, platform plays. That meant that I was going to get my fundamentals right. Don't try to be sexy until you have quality and consistency and commitment where people want to follow you. I had to build my trust of a function. I had to build my trust with leaders and the employees. What is that value prop and can I deliver it? So the platform play was being compliant, being truthful and honest, showing more transparency, learning, and iterating so people would want to follow and believe. The second 18 months was about innovation and iteration, getting better feedback, getting smarter, looking at our tools, looking at cost opportunity, all of that. And we finished this 3-year journey map this past spring. We evaluated where we were. We were 95, 96% completed. And the reason why we got to that level of completion in this roadmap is because we stayed really focused on it. We measured ourselves. We measured employee engagement twice a year. We measure our new hires on their onboarding. We measure candidates that we lost in the pipeline and why. We measured people that left the company and why. We measured a whole bunch of different things to create a heat map to constantly improve and understand our truth. And we're not perfect by any stretch, but listening and tweaking and saying, I changed this because you said this isn't working. Let's try this experiment. Garners a lot of trust. And they don't expect me to be perfect because we're learning together in some of these things. Some of these things we know are going to be easy, but a lot of things with humans are hard. And we have a very clear quarterly cadence as a leadership team. Here's what I'm committing to do. Here's the rhythm of the business. Here's the quality, and here's how I'm going to measure it. We only commit to like 2 to 4 big things per year for change. I don't want to distract my leaders or the employees. I want to stay really focused on what we're doing, and I want to nail it. Too much change in an organization, if you have too many leaders worried about too many things, you distract them from the product, from the marketplace, from what you're trying to do. So be clear about what you're trying to strive for, how much change in behavior you're asking for, and making sure there's support around them to enable that to happen easily. There's a lot of stuff I do in my backyard that the manager will never see to create more efficiency. But if I ask you to change your behavior from A to B, then I'm going to go more thoughtfully with that. I'm going to explain why I think that's relevant and get your buy-in. And then we're going to lock arms and try it. And I'll have a very quick release valve if it's not working. Because the goal is to make a profitable company. The goal is to do really great things in the world. The goal is to make sure that every employee at LinkedIn feels like they can contribute and belong. So we want to make sure we're always watching that carefully. Now, why does this matter? I had some conversations last night in the lobby with some of the conference participants, and that was a lot of fun for me. And we're talking about culture and values, and we're talking about why are you attending as an entrepreneur this conference? Why do you attend, Women in Leadership and Women at Business conference, a panel yesterday? Why are you here? What does success look like? It was fascinating. And they talked about talent. They talked about, majority of their employees are women. They want to understand how to attract and retain women. Why are you in Arizona? Why is your business in Arizona? Very, strong community, very business supportive. We can have great affordable housing. There's so many benefits to having a business in Arizona, right? From a talent perspective, cost of talent, et cetera. And all that made so much sense to me because on average around the world, this is an average, about 80% of a company's operational expense is related to talent. If you're a service company, it's in the high 90s. You could say it's 100%. If you're capitally intense, it's in the 30s, 20s, depending on your business model. But talent drives your strategy, makes it real. Every person's a culture champion. Talent is so important. So, so important. And you have to realize when you meet them, how you court them, send signals of your brand. Every reach out you make, every time a recruiter reaches out and sells a promise of your company, that sets your brand in motion. So at LinkedIn and at other companies, what I love to do is experiment. I try to listen to the needs of an employee and try to think out the most feasible way to address that need without breaking the bank, right? I gotta watch my OpEx. And so PerkUp was one of those ideas that we had. We were growing rapidly. We didn't want to increase our benefits and our perks too much because it would be too expensive for us to carry. So we created a program called PerkUp. PerkUp was simply an opportunity to put more choice in your hands as an employee. We heard feedback, especially from the millennial generation, that I want choice, that when you put in parental programs and extending maternity leave, that's great if I had a family, but if I'm an individual and my family are my dogs, how are you helping me? It's not balanced in how you support me and my lifestyle. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of fair. I agree with that. And they were talking about how do you meet me where I need you versus traditional approach. But if I accommodated everybody in daycare and dog walking and you name it, that platform gets really expensive for anybody. So PerkUp in a nutshell is equivalent to $2,000 a year per employee, $500 a quarter, and we have a list of benefits that you can do for yourself, for your wellness, for your family, that gives you choice in how to use it. You just take a snapshot of the receipt in which you paid for a personal trainer, the dog walker, child care support. You take a snapshot, you submit it like an expense, and you get reimbursed. As easy as that. And it meets you where you are. It's the most talked about benefit in the company, and it's the cheapest. It's the best educational tool in the company. We had a white paper from an employee, from an engineer. God, I love engineers. He wrote a dissertation about the value of acupuncture. And he goes, Pat, the acupuncturist, blah, 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 and health and pain management. It was a beautiful paper. I loved it. And then I sent it to my team, and they loved it too. And then we politely wrote back, and he said, we so agree with you, George. That's why it's in our benefit plan. You will get more coverage using our benefit plan than PerkUp. Let me point you over here. Take advantage of that and get all the acupuncture you need and want. And we did that over and over again. If they're worried about certain support, if we couldn't do it in our core plans, it might be covered in our PerkUp. If not, we'll consider it in the PerkUp for next year. But PerkUp is manageable, and it's capped, and it's global. It's a beautiful thing. And it provides choice to employees, meet them where they are. One experiment. The other one is to reinforce your culture. When you're growing as rapidly as LinkedIn was, if you have a group of 10 people and you replace 2 of those individuals, you risk losing your culture. 25% or more change in people and leadership will change how you think and how you make decisions. So how you indoctrinate those leaders to your culture and values is really, really important. Do it with intentionality. You want fresh eyes, you want fresh perspective. At the same time, this is who we are, how we stand, how we make decisions. They got to marry up. So what we did globally to make sure that we had a pulse in every location with the rapid hiring, we created culture champions. These are employees that voluntarily hold the flagship for our culture. And they host different events. We provide them like toolkits. This is how you roll out the speaker series. This is how you do this event for X, Y, and Z. But at LinkedIn, we also have what is called an in-day. An in-day is 1 day a month. They have themes. It's a reflection theme. It's a giving back theme. It's a family theme. Our family theme is Bring Your Parents to Work Day. It's celebrating who we are and our family and our heritage. Diversity and Inclusion Learning Day. It could be, each theme is there 12 times a year, sponsored by an executive, hosted by these culture champions, and supported by the employees around the world. And what they do is that they have threads. They have things about our culture to reinforce it, to celebrate who we are. We have learning bites, things that you might be interested in. We have speakers come in. You can actually stay home and volunteer at your children's school because giving back to the community is part of who we are. This is a day for you, for the company, for you to rejuvenate, to innovate, to be engaged. Some of it's structured, some of it's unstructured, personally driven, and supported by the executives. This reinforces our culture because we talk about it each month. We showcase it. We have stories, hashtag LinkedIn Life. Storytelling is so powerful. Another experiment. And then one of those things is Bring Your Parents to Work Day. Started 4 years ago. Now other companies are participating. What we found, we're 67% millennials in our organization, that a lot of this generation speak to their parents about their career decisions. A lot of them have parents that don't understand what they're doing. They have no clue what their kids are doing. And in certain parts of the world, their parents influence their decisions quite a bit. In India, for example, the parents actually accommodate the kids on interviews. They come with them. Most companies make the parents sit in the lobby. I think that's appropriate. But some parents, look, I'm part of this decision process. I want to make sure my child has a great job. This is very important to me and my family. And so recognizing this family unit, we decided to take your children to work day. We took our parents to work and educated them on what is the internet, what is the economic graph at LinkedIn, how does your child navigate, what is the career promise, what's the value prop that we offer your child, and how does it manifest? It's pretty freaking cool. Because what happens is that these adults learn about their child, really get excited, learn your product, learn your service, become advocates for your business. One day, you broaden your brand. Very easy to do. And yesterday we were talking, I was on a panel for women in technology and women in business overall, and we were talking about women in tech in particular and the challenges that we have attracting and retaining women and going into the elementary school, the middle years, and high school, and keeping them in the STEM and talking about those issues. And a gentleman that was on our panel said, he has a daughter that's like 18 months old, 2 years old, and he gives her Legos. He loves building laser beams and spaceships out of Legos when he was younger, and he wants her to fall in love with that same thing. And I'm like, oh, I love Legos. I love Legos. And when it comes to Legos and diversity, it was an easy match for me. I've had a lot of humbling experiences when talking about race and gender and diversity overall in the workplace. And what I recognize is that as humans, when we show marketing materials of your company, diverse candidates want to see themselves in that picture. And then if you have one of everything, it looks inauthentic, right? So you're caught. How do you show who we are and what I am? How do I show I'm inviting to a diverse makeup? How do I tell my story without excluding or being inauthentic? How do I stay true? And so a Lego for me is magic because they're so unique. They're better together. They make amazing things together, and you can visualize who you are. You have superheroes as Legos now. I can be an astronaut. I can be Wonder Woman. I can be a Viking. I can build a Star Wars Lego. I can do amazing things with Legos. But at LinkedIn this year, what we're talking about is adding the third element called belonging. And it came out of a conversation about D&I and that it's necessary but not sufficient. Why haven't we made progress? What's going on? And for me personally, it was diversity and inclusion grabbed my intellect, but not my heart enough. There was something missing in that equation. Diversity is everything that makes you unique. I think there's like 37 index of diverse, criteria that you can identify with. It's complex space. But the goal for you and every business is to have diversity of thought. If you want great outcomes, challenging the status quo, don't have groupthink, you'll have better innovation and better outcomes. It might be harder to get to a conclusion. It might be an awkward, tough conversation. But the data shows over and over and over again that you are better served. So as business leaders, you know that your earning per share as the stockholder goes up, your innovation goes up, you're able to serve the marketplace, et cetera, That makes sense. So diversity makes sense. Inclusion, we've been talking about in the industry for about a decade. It's about fair practices, inviting you to that table, making sure everyone gets invited. Can I see myself in your company? Can I thrive in your company? Will you treat me appropriately? So that's inviting you to the table, but if I have a diverse team around my table, is that sufficient? And the answer for us was no. Because if you don't feel psychologically safe, you're not going to speak up. If you try to speak up, and as a woman you get spoken over, you'll get quiet. If you're an introvert, you will stay quiet unless invited. If you're an underrepresented minority, it gets even tougher to not see anyone like you around that table, and so on and so forth. So you don't get the voices that you actually need and want. And so creating an organization that has a sense of belonging, that I feel safe, I can be authentic, that you hired me because I'm unique, you treat me fairly, you have a great culture, and you want my opinions, and I get to contribute, and I'm recognized and respected and appreciated, that's something really cool. That's belonging. So we're calling dibs on it, and we're measuring it. The other thing we stumbled on, and this has been around a decade, is that belonging is genetically wired in every human being. We're compelled to belong to a clan, to a tribe, to a family. That has been in our DNA. That's how we survived and thrived as a species. There's a ton of research on it. Professor Greg Walton in Stanford has been doing this. And he talks about the mindset of belonging. The thing that unlocks your mindset of thinking maybe I belong to knowing I belong is through storytelling. Storytelling releases chemicals in the human brain that says, I can see myself in that story. I can empathize with your point of view. I have higher compassion. And I can see myself being successful because someone similar to me has been successful. So if you're not telling enough stories about your company and your employee experience, then you're losing an opportunity. So we're on a path to figuring out how to increase our belonging. We have measured it. It is universal. It's global need. And when you give belonging moments to others, you actually have a higher level of engagement. It's kind of like to give is to receive. I'm like, duh, that makes sense. To give someone the sense of comfort and respect and inclusion actually increases your own sense. And so we're teaching the company about how to give these belonging moments, how to court someone, how to tell your story, how to ask everyone in that staff meeting their opinion. Don't let the quiet ones go by and not speak. Figure out a way for an introvert to get the material in advance of a staff meeting so they have a confidence to speak in the meeting. How do you adapt your leadership style to accommodate all types? That's pretty magical. And so LinkedIn also worries about and cares about where you work. So you have a sense of an organization from the halls that you walk through, from the door, from the greet, from the handshake. This is who I am, welcome to LinkedIn, or Yahoo, wherever I'm at the time, and I give an impression. The physical space, the cleanliness of that space, the safety of that space, the colors you choose, how light is it, how do you support someone with disabilities or not, tells a lot of stories. And so look at your world through a new lens. How do I show up? What stories are you telling intentionally and unintentionally through your workspace? What pictures are on the wall? How broad is it? Do I see myself in that story or not? And can I be successful in this company? Every step along the way, you're telling a story. 90% of language is through body language, not even words. Imagine what you hear through the hallways of your office. It's pretty amazing what people take away. They don't remember, I forget who said the quote, I don't remember what you said, but I know how you made me feel. That's so true. That is so true. I want people to feel great. So tweak it. That's what I ask. I love counting smiles. How did I make you feel? So looking at all of this and taking small experiments, LinkedIn's engagement right now is at 91%. It's probably in the top 5-6 percentile of the world in terms of benchmarking, which is very good. We're just now being acquired by Microsoft. And so, we're going through times of uncertainty. We haven't even closed yet, right? I need to keep this engagement high. And so I just recently did another engagement survey. We do it over and over again to see what's working and what's not and tweaking it. It's listening and it's responding. And when you respond to something, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I know you heard me. I know that you care because you took an action, perfect or imperfect. That step alone of hearing and taking an action gains you so much trust and loyalty, but you have to communicate you took that action. If I were to ask you to raise your hands, how often have you heard feedback, taken an action, never told anyone? I bet you most of the hands would get raised. You're like, I just do. I hear it. I make a change. But for a lot of people, you got to show you said this and therefore I did that to show their voice changed an outcome. If you have all hands, if you do emails to your team, if you have staff meetings, talk about cause and effect of their words, engagement just gets really solid. Don't assume they see the connection. Don't assume. Because they will assume someone else said it. That's that fear factor of an individual. They'll assume you did it, you already had a plan for it, someone else thought of it, it wasn't me. You need to tie it together. They said this, you mattered, I changed. You will get so much good credibility for that. Oh, I'm at the end here. So see how quick that went for me? So if I were to pull back and give advice to this audience, is really be authentic to your business, to who you are, where you work. Understand your value prop as you want it to be. I freaked out some of my peers because they said, Pat, we're not there yet. How do we get there? And I'm like, we get there with intentionality, one step, one step, one step. And we communicate to the employees the best we can. And it's so hard to do that when you're running fast. We're not great at that yet. We're still doing it. We do all hands every 2 weeks. We communicate broadly. We have these in-days, and still not enough. There was a study somewhere that said you had to tell me something 20 times before I really got it. Think about that. The same thing. I think you got it 3 times. I have to 10x that almost for you to really get what I'm saying. So repeating something is really valuable. Really, really valuable. And culture beats strategy. Because if you have a great strategy and people aren't aligned, and that it's not something that you can translate how they impact that strategy, that they're actually manifesting that vision, you will lose great opportunity, you'll lose engagement, and they will churn out of your business. That's a loss. So those are my pearls of wisdom. Take them for what you will. I hope it was useful, and enjoy the rest of your conference.